Welcome to the Saturday Cup of Joe podcast. This podcast is dedicated to EAS employees of the U.S. Postal Service and members of the National Association of Postal Supervisors. So, pour yourself a cup of coffee and join us for today's episode. And now, here's your host, Robert Wakefield.
Well, good morning, Branch 32, and good morning, Naps family from across the country. Hi there, hey there, ho there. We're as happy as can be. That's somebody else's thing. I better not do that. Welcome to the Saturday Cup of Joe podcast, presented by the Nashville Post Office Credit Union. I'm Robert Wakefield, president of Branch 32. Thank you so much. Thank you. All right, we got a great show lined up for you. So let's go ahead and pour that first cup. This October, Nashville Post Office Credit Union is serving up more than just great rates. We're bringing the fun. On October 16th, celebrate International Credit Union Day with us. Enjoy a free lunch, and document shredding will be taking place from 11 to 2. Then swing by on October 28th for National Chocolate Day. We've got a sweet treat just waiting for you. And don't miss the Pumpkin Showdown the last week of October. Stop in and vote for your favorite decorated pumpkin. Get all the details at npocu.org. The Nashville Post Office Credit Union, people helping people since 1925. And for our first cup today, I'm going to stir up a little wisdom into our weekend brew. I like that. I don't know what it means, but I do like it. We're going to talk about something that's been creeping into our calendars. It's something that is even creeping into our sanity. And yes, it even creeps into our coffee breaks. I'm talking about Zoom fatigue. Now, don't get me wrong. Zoom was a lifeline when the world was shut down. It kept us all connected. It kept the mail moving in a lot of ways. It kept the mission alive. But somewhere along the way, it stopped feeling like a bridge, and it started feeling like a treadmill. And I'm going to tell y'all, the grid is heavy. No question about it. So let's look at the rise of this grid. Let's talk about this for a second. Let's rewind and look back to 2020. Zoom went from a technological darling to a global necessity. Corporate America embraced it. The Postal Service embraced it. And then suddenly, everything had to be a meeting. Once a memo in your emails to remind you to do something turned into a 30-minute Zoom meeting with a shared screen and follow-up email. A nickel for every time I hear someone say, "Can everybody hear me?" Or how about this? "You're on mute, Robert." It just goes on and on and on. You know, Stanford University reported over 300 million daily Zoom participants at the peak of Zoom. And we were right there with them, and right there in the mix. EAS employees were juggling operations and staffing and grievances, and it was just a lot going on. And it was like we traded, the time clock that we used to talk about stuff at for the webcam. You're not just working anymore, now you're performing. And half the time, the meeting could have been taken care of by sending a memo. Well, here's why it's exhausting. The Stanford researchers actually broke it down, and this is what they called Zoom fatigue. And it comes from four things. One of them is too much close-up eye contact. It feels intense, even unnatural. And the other thing is seeing yourself constantly. It's like watching yourself in a mirror all day. And the thing is, you're always watching that because your boss will say something that you want to agree with, and you can't roll your eyes because you've got your camera on. So you're always watching yourself. That's exhausting. Another thing that they discovered is reduced mobility. You're stuck in one spot. And my favorite thing is you're trying to look engaged, like you're really interested. And the last thing they cited was a high cognitive load, that your brain continues to work overtime to especially read the nonverbal cues from your friends or your manager. And the Postal Service? Multiply that by the number of meetings you're expected to attend while running a facility. You know, there's been talks of people on Zoom meetings and they're scanning parcels or they're answering a grievance call or doing 10 or 20 more things all at once. That's not multitasking, that's survival. So let's talk about what this looks like in our world, the Postal Service. Because if you're an EAS employee, and you are if you're listening to this podcast, you know Zoom is not just a tool, it is the treadmill. And sometimes it's running faster than we can keep up. So here's some of the things I see that the abuses are taking place. And the first one is overscheduling and micromanagement. Overscheduling. A postmaster sent me his day one day. He said, this is my typical day. And it's Zoom meeting started at 7:30. And he had Zoom meetings back to back to back till about 1:30 or 2 o'clock. Different topics, different subjects, different bosses, district people, whatever it was. He was on a Zoom meeting from 7:30 to 2. That's way, way too many Zoom meetings for anyone to have to do in a day. And the second thing was the lack of boundaries. These meetings are bleeding over into our off hours. They're bleeding over into weekends. They're overlapping other operational duties. You're expected to always be available. And that brings me to this. A postmaster sent me this. It says offices are required to get on this call. The below offices, this was from Monday, September the 8th, 2025. And it's about offices not scoring 99.9% on their committed volume. All right? So that's what this is about. And the time frame that was used was from July 26th through September 5th, and you had to have a minimum of 12,000 committed packages for the day, or for that week, rather. It may be that week. But if you scored under 99.9, you had to be on a Zoom. You had to be on a bridge call from 6 p.m. to whenever they got to you. And listen to this. It had to have a minimum of 12,000 parcels. Murfreesboro, you're a real hero. You had 284,268 parcels, and you scored a 99.89. 1/10, or 1/100th of a point, rather. And you had to be on this bridge call. Maryville, you had 220,452 committed parcels, and you only scored a 99.85. Yeah, I'd say that's a little bit of lack of boundaries there, wouldn't you think? Had to be on a Zoom call that started at 6 p.m., and just whenever they got to you, you could get off. Another abuse that I've seen is camera pressure. These expectations, these unspoken expectations that you got to keep your camera on, even when you're multitasking or you're just exhausted, you're expected to keep that camera on. So I'm sure that many NAPS branches complained about all of these Zoom meetings and how they were going on. Well, we just received a message not too long ago from NAPS headquarters that the Chief Retail and Delivery Officer today said, and I'm going to read what the memo says. Today is no Zoom meetings from 5:30 p.m. through 10 a.m. Managers, postmasters, and supervisors are to be managing and supervising. No Zooms on weekends for the sake of having a Zoom. Zooms are only to take place outside of 10 a.m. through 5:30 p.m. in the event that there is or will be an emergency, such as a natural disaster. The USPS area vice presidents received this directive today, and were informed that they need to ensure their district managers are aware and are in compliance. If it is still occurring, you're to ask your NAPS area and regional VPs to contact the area VP and inform them. And if it continues, then NAPS headquarters will deal with that. So, it's only offices that are under CRDO. It's not for everyone, but those offices that are under CRDO, there's to be no Zoom meetings before 10 a.m. and none after 5:30 p.m. And if this is happening in your district, be sure you notify your area vice presidents. So, Zoom helped us survive, but now we got to learn how to thrive. We've got to learn how to reclaim our time, protect our peace, and remember, connection doesn't always require a camera. You can get a connection through an email just as well. And so I wanted to give you that Zoom fatigue lesson on today's Cup of Joe. All right, let's go ahead and pour that second cup. You know, banking should be made simple. That's why Ollie, the Nashville Post Office Credit Union's virtual assistant, is here, ready to help 24/7. Need quick answers? Ollie delivers secure, instant solutions right at your fingertips. No wait times, no hassle, just smart banking made easy. Whether you're managing your finances, exploring loan options, or just need guidance, Ollie is always ready to assist, wherever and whenever you need. The Nashville Post Office Credit Union, people helping people since 1925. And for our second cup, I want to talk about what I love this time of year. I love autumn, and it's because I love pumpkin spice coffee. And so I wanted to know, who was the one that came up with the pumpkin spice latte? Well, that's none other than Starbucks. And they came up with this back in 2003. They were looking to bottle autumn in a cup because they already had this huge hit with peppermint mocha for the winter. So fall needed its own anthem. And according to what I read, this team of flavor developers, yes, that's a real job, started making this pumpkin puree with cinnamon, nutmeg, clove, and espresso. And then boom, the pumpkin spice latte was born. Now at first, it didn't even have any pumpkin in it. It just had those spices, but people went wild for it. It just felt like fall had finally found its voice. The sales soared, hashtags appeared, and suddenly the pumpkin spice latte was more than a drink. It turned into a vibe. And then when you fast forward a few years, this pumpkin spice was everywhere. It's in candles. It's in cereal. You can even find it in dog treats, I read. So I want you to slow down this weekend and go get you some pumpkin spice coffee or get you a pumpkin spice latte. And you can thank the Saturday Cup of Joe, and you can say, hey, thanks a latte. So that's going to wrap it up for today's episode of the Saturday Cup of Joe podcast presented by the Nashville Post Office Credit Union. Now, you know what I'm going to tell you. Go ahead and share this show. We have about 25 listeners across the country, and we need to make that a lot higher. So share it with your EAS friends. This is a good one. This is talking about Zoom fatigue and what the CRDO has done to settle that. So go in there and share this podcast with all your friends. So that's going to do it. I'm Robert Wakefield. And remember, every great weekend starts with a great cup of Joe. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for tuning in to the Saturday Cup of Joe podcast. Please note that the views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of Robert Wakefield and do not necessarily reflect the views of the National Association of Postal Supervisors. We welcome your questions and comments. So send those to SaturdayCupOfJoe@gmail.com.